Hello guys, Chris here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce GTX 1660 Super 6GB GPU in Cyberpunk 2077. This one is the HP OEM version of the card. We are running it with the latest NVIDIA drivers, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups GPU Z, and over on the left, preparing it with a Ryzen 7 5800X 3D and 32GB of RAM to avoid CPU bottlenecks. But you will be able to achieve the same FPS if you pair it, for example, with something like a Ryzen 5 3600, which is a much better pairing. Let's get into it, shall we? First up, let's go over the settings. I'm playing at 1080p resolution, and we're using the low settings preset at the moment. I'm just gonna increase the texture quality to high. 6GB are enough for high textures at 1080p, unlike the newer titles. And let's apply that. I'm also gonna disable FSR 2.1 right now for that native resolution experience, and this is it. This is not the minimum settings, by the way. As you can see, some things are on medium. It's the low settings preset with native 1080p resolution. Crowd density is set to medium here, and everything else is as is. Alright guys, let's start counting our FPS. I tested this GPU like 3 weeks ago, and I don't remember the performance whatsoever, so it's gonna be like the first time once again. Very nice. Anyway, it's getting 60-ish frames per second at 1080p low settings. Native resolution again, which looks pretty nice actually, compared to the low settings that we previously had in an earlier version of the game. These new low settings don't look like low settings at all. It looks pretty damn good, and it's actually really smooth on the GTX 1660 Super, with 60-ish frames per second on average. Unfortunately, it's not gonna stay in the 60s. It should start dropping now. Okay, 60. Oh boy, that's a little bit better than I expected. Okay, it's not really dropping into the 50s yet. And we're here in this roundabout, which is one of the most intensive areas in the entire game. It's not the most intensive area, by the way, so it will definitely drop. Oh, there we go, 58 right there. There's like a park area with a lot of vegetation where it drops the most. Where is Bob? Oh, he already ran away. He knew the bastard. Is this Bob? I don't know. Oh gods. Oh gods. Bob wouldn't say gods, right? Who the heck is Bob? Come on. Stop him. Somebody said stop him. That sounds like Bob to me, right? This one. This is Bob. Goodbye, Bob. All right, there we go. Considering that we started this benchmark run getting mid-60s in the FPS counter, I thought it was going to be a little bit worse. But it only dropped to like 58, so if you're looking for that native 1080p experience, oh, they still haven't fixed the crashing in this game. But yeah, that's the way to go. 1080p, low settings is going to provide you a great experience. Okay, next up, I will actually try the low preset with high textures again, but with FSR 2.1 set to quality, which is the auto setting for 1080p. So let's apply that. Everything else is still the same here. Gameplay tab, medium crowd density. Let's go. Okay, FSR 2.1 looks really good in this game. It's a little bit more shimmery than native resolution, but I think it gets pretty close, especially if you are running it on a native 1080p monitor. I am using a huge monitor here. It's a 42-inch 4K panel, so of course things will look a little bit more grainy, a little bit more shimmery, a little bit more noisy as well, but trust me, on a smaller monitor, it should look great still. And this is probably the way to play this game if you want to get 60 plus the entire time without dropping whatsoever, because we are now in the 80s after all, and even touching 90s, so I doubt that even in the most intensive area in the entire game, it will drop from 60 at this point. Again, since the game still looks really, really pretty, I wouldn't have a problem playing like this with FSR 2.1 on quality. Yeah, I missed Bob there. Come on. Okay, let's get out of the car. We wrecked it already. Where is he? Where is he? Gosh, he's always going away. Is this Bob? I don't think so. I'm sorry, buddy. I will end your pain, your suffering, yes. But where is Bob? I really wanted to see that bastard and kill him. Maybe we can pretend that we are the police now, and now Bob won't be scared of us. Maybe he already knows our car, so that's why he runs away every time. Anyways, going around this roundabout, it gets lower 80s, maybe touching 90 at times. That's pretty good. I Let me just check out the hospital area. Wait, dropping into the high 70s at times. But yeah, it's really far from 60 FPS, and I really like the implementation of FSR 2.1 in this game. Works great here with the GTX 1660 Super as well. So thank you, AMD, for introducing FSR 2 for everybody. Alright, let's stop it there. 87 FPS average, 1% lows in the 60s, but I didn't see it drop that far. This is a really nice experience, and it looks great, and it's low settings. But let's bump it up to medium settings, disable that FSR once again, disable motion blur as well, otherwise the video will look like crap on YouTube, and still using medium crowd density here. So this is the medium settings preset. And it's already dropping from 60 frames per second, unfortunately. However, it's not gonna be a terrible experience, guys. It's still okay with 50-ish frames per second whenever you get out of the car. Wait a second, let me concentrate. There we go, goodbye, Bob! Now he's dead. I can see you, I can see you! There he is. There he is. Not dead. He was pretending to be dead. And he's still not dead because I haven't seen the hit marker, the red one. There we go. Now he's dead. Let's go. We gotta go around the roundabout as well. Wait. All right. There we go. All good. All good. Down into the 40s at times, guys. A lot of action going on right here. Okay. All good. Oh, boy. Oh, that was tough. Okay. Get out of the way, people. Okay. Right, we have 4 stars of police. Oh, I'm dead. Okay, here we are. Ow, already. We didn't wreck our car. Okay, everything is fine still. It's getting 50s still. Pretty much the same thing as we've seen before in the roundabout area as well. And, oh, those purple lights look really good, actually. I like it. Anywho, here we are. This is the hospital area, and it is not dropping. It is not dropping too much. Medium settings still provides a decent and playable experience, with some drops into the 40s, but if you can overlook that, and you want a little bit higher visual fidelity than low, like a lot of things are on medium, of course, but a few things are also on high, you can have it. Let's try out quality FSR 2.1. I'm gonna start counting the FPS, and here we go. Now it should be above 60 FPS the entire time. Oh, I totally forgot about the ghosting effect from FSR 2.1. It's not as noticeable as the previous time that I tested this. Maybe it's because of the car. Yeah, it probably is because of the car. I doubt they fixed it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ghosting whatsoever. But if you take a look at the license plate on my car, for example, you can see a little trail behind it. It looks ugly. It goes away if you use motion blur, by the way. Bye, Bob, once again. Oh, we're being carried away. That's perfect. You know what? Oh, that's a very nice lady. What is happening to these cars? Did you see that? Also, you don't need ray tracing to have some decent reflections, you know? Of course, they're not really too detailed, but they're still reflecting the light and stuff. Even when the light is off screen, you can see a lot of things disappear on the reflection right there, for example. But some of the lights don't, and I think it still looks pretty damn good. Let's just see the hospital area once again, see how much it will drop to. I don't think it will drop more than what we've already seen. It's interesting that the lights on top of the car are actually turned on this time around. I like that. And they cast a lot of light on the walls and stuff. Look at that. Yeah, this is a quite nice experience with 60 FPS 1% lows. Can't really complain about that, can we? Also, I forgot to use Intel XeSS. I'm gonna turn it on ultra quality. As you can see, it's way more intensive than FSR 2 in this game. It looks maybe a little bit over-sharpened. It actually looks great in my opinion, but FSR 2 is the way to go. It still drops into the 50s, as you can see, when you use XeSS on ultra quality. And then if you use it on quality instead, it visually looks very similar to FSR 2 on quality, maybe a little bit worse actually, and it gets less FPS anyways. So this is not the way to play Cyberpunk if you have an NVIDIA GPU at least. Right, so we should probably move on to high settings. This is where it will start struggling a lot. Disabled FSR as well as motion blur again, and everything is set to high. And we're still at 1080p, of course, getting 40-ish frames per second. Still playable, but now it's starting to get kind of rough, honestly. Turning the camera around doesn't feel anywhere near as smooth as it did, even at medium settings and native 1080p resolution, so I don't think I would use it. Oh my gosh, that was a very beautiful bob killer. Kill, yes. I think overall it's a really stable experience. It doesn't move too much from the averages. It goes down to like the lower 40s, sometimes it goes up into the low 50s, but it's very, very stable and consistent, unlike the newer titles of today, you know, those stutter like crazy. Pretty much all of the 2023 titles have stutters. Yeah. I think so. Maybe Dead Island 2 is a bit smoother than usual, but can't think of any other game that released this year that runs without stuttering issues. Maybe The Last of Us now that it has been fixed. I'm gonna say high settings are actually pretty alright, and they are performing a bit better than I expected. I thought it would drop into like the 30s, and it didn't. Quality FSR is next on high settings. Can we get close to 60? Wow. It's getting 70s. Damn, that's pretty good. Will it even drop from 60? I think so. Yeah, okay, there we go. Ooh, that's a major drop, okay. Into the mid-50s. I mean, it's still very playable. It's better than, like, medium settings and native resolution in terms of the FPS. So there's that. That was already a playable experience. So this is, of course, a playable experience as well. Let's just visit Jack this time around, okay? It's been a while. Let's see him. Also, not a lot of people watched my 980 Ti GTA 5 video that I posted last week, so go watch that. Jack was there, alive, not in a graffiti farm. So please give him a word. Right? It's also very interesting that it crashed at the beginning. Are you serious? Are you I was just gonna say that I was impressed that it hasn't crashed ever since the first crash, but okay, there we go. This happens a lot. Alright guys, let's start counting the FPS. Here we go. This is all that I wanted to see. FPS near the hospital area, 61, 63, 59. There we go. Now it's starting to become more intensive. Probably some settings are more intensive in this area. I don't know. Well, let's go in the front. Okay, let's try to jump up these stairs. Alright, there we go. That actually worked. Nice. That was cool. Now we're stuck. Let's move on to something else. Let's try ultra settings this time around. Oh yes, and we can also play with ray tracing with the 1660 Super. These graphics cards do support ray tracing through the drivers, okay? That's gonna be interesting. I turned off, again, the motion blur as well as FSR, and over on the gameplay tab, still the same thing. Okay, so now 40s. Obviously, we're not in a very intensive area anymore because I got out of that area. We jumped and it was fun. Fun over FPS, right, guys? That's what matters. But I can say that I doubt that it will drop from 30. You know what? The game is looking really beautiful here on ultra settings without RT. Honestly, like the ambient occlusion and the shadows and stuff look really good. Anyway, this ultra settings at 1080p native, and it is playable. I am playing the game. I could enjoy the game like this. I wouldn't play like it because you can have a much smoother experience with lower settings and it still looks great. But if you want ultra, you can have it with the 1660 Super. It's not a terrible experience. And we still have that FSR 2.1 to save the day. Look at how much of a difference it makes. Instead of getting high 30s, low 40s, we're now getting mid 50s, low 50s at times. High 40s at times as well. It's at least like 10 FPS higher than what we saw previously by enabling FSR. Things still look really good again. I can see some shimmering, especially here on top of the truck. It's very noticeable because it has those little lines, you know, you can clearly tell, but everywhere else it looks pretty good. Can't really complain about the look of FSR2 in this game. In some games it looks pretty bad. In this one I think it's definitely worth using. You can have 54 FPS average and 46 1% lows at 1080p ultra settings with FSR2 on quality. That's great! But now we gotta try out ray tracing. I'm gonna try the low preset first on the ray tracing settings. That means that everything is maxed out. Basically, almost everything. This one isn't. And now ray tracing is on, but only with ray traced shadows, and that's it. Okay. The low settings ray tracing is not really that great. Oh boy, it's already wrecked. Oh no, it was just applying. Wait a second. We are playing the game right now with close to 30 FPS, sometimes surpassing 30 FPS on a 1660 Super using ray traced shadows. I thought it was gonna get like 10, 15 FPS like at the beginning, but no, after it applied, it's actually a playable experience without any upscaling. What if we try it with FSR? I think it's probably gonna stay above 30 FPS all of the time. It was close already previously, so it should do a decent job with RT. That's crazy, dude. I remember testing RT in an earlier version of the game again with the GTX 1660 Ti, which is about 5% faster than the Super here. And it went terribly. It got like 5 FPS, probably on Ray Tracing Ultra settings, but yeah, this is playable. It doesn't look very different from the default Ultra settings though, so I would definitely not use it, but it's there if you want to try it out. What about Ray Tracing Medium? Let me disable this, disable that, and go down here. Ray Tracing Medium enables ray traced sun shadows, which won't really make any difference because it's nighttime right now. Ray traced local shadows, as well as ray traced lighting on medium this time. So now we got shadows and lighting, but no reflections yet. Okay, maybe it's still applying. But I think this is... we reached unplayability, basically. It cannot do it. Yeah, 10 FPS, 9 FPS. Right, it's still enough FPS for us to kill Bob, so let's try that out, okay? Alright, almost there. Goodbye, Bob! Did we hit him? Yes, we did. See that? We can still kill Bob, well, hit Bob at least. So it's very playable, isn't it? No. Let's enable quality FSR, see if it saves the day. I don't think it will. Yeah, we got 2 more FPS or whatever. It was applying though. We got like 7 more FPS. That's a much better experience. Yeah, it actually feels a lot smoother than it felt before. So to no one's surprise, I hope the 1660 Super can't really run ray tracing. Okay, just stay away from these settings. But I won't stay away. I want to see it on Ultra next, with native resolution first, no motion blur, and now it enabled pretty much everything aside from path tracing, which is the overdrive setting. So yeah, this is gonna be insanely intensive. I'm expecting like 4 FPS, maybe 5, when it applies. I guess it's applied already, probably. It's not gonna move from here. 6? 6 is great. It's way better than what I expected, you know? Let's try quality FSR. And it is getting way higher FPS. Damn, it makes a huge difference. No matter what settings you're playing on, even using ray tracing, enabling FSR on quality just bumps up your FPS like crazy, right? We went from 6 or 5 FPS to 15. We gained 10 frames per second. That's about the same gain in FPS as we saw on medium, I think, or high, or whatever it was. And now, do the unthinkable. Let's play with the Ray Tracing Overdrive, no FSR, no motion blur. This is a technology preview, and they actually recommend at least an RTX 4070 Ti or RTX 3090 to play it with these settings, and that's with DLSS. I think it's running out of VRAM at this point, even though it's showing 5.7 gigs, roughly. The RAM usage went up to 14 gigabytes, so I think it swapped some things that should be on VRAM into the RAM at this point. Game looks very different, right? It's a bit darker, actually, but it's way more accurate to what it would look like in the real life. I can't really get to a point where I want to screenshot it. At 10 FPS I could. At 2? No way. No way in hell. That's obvious though. Let's go back to low settings preset, native resolution, and I'm gonna play at 1440p this time around. Alright, this is it. I just resized the on-screen display and let's try this out. Alright, back into the 40s. It feels like 100 FPS now. After playing with 2 frames, I will never complain about 40 anymore. The power usage of the card is back to normal because we're not having any VRAM issues anymore, and we can play it at 1440p. And actually, back in 2020, I think I reviewed the 1660 Ti back in 2020, maybe it was 2019, and I made my full review on it at 1440p resolution. A lot of people complained about me testing the games at 1440p. Cyberpunk hadn't come out yet at that point, but the fact of the matter is that I could and I did use it as my main GPU for a while, and I played a ton of games at 1440p back then. Here, I'm not gonna say that Cyberpunk super intensive, 1660 Super and the Ti as well, they do struggle a lot at 1440p in this game, so I'd stick to 1080, but it's playable. Again, since it could actually play stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, at medium settings with comfortable FPS, 1440p, it makes sense that it can play Cyberpunk 2077 at low settings and 1440p. Yeah, 47 FPS average, 41% lows. It's not bad. Let's go with quality FSR now, which will look pretty damn good here at 1440p. If it looked good at 1080p, at higher resolutions, it will look even better. But now we're getting around 60 frames per second. And it still looks close enough to fool somebody into thinking that this is actually native 1440p. If I was playing this on a 27-inch 1440p monitor with high PPI, you know, 107 PPI, and I showed this to somebody else at my house, for example, a friend, you know, I don't have any, but imagine I do. I'm fairly certain they would think that this is native resolution on a 1440p panel. Should we try medium settings as well, without FSR and without the motion blur? Here we go. This is native resolution medium settings, getting 30s. Yeah, when it starts dropping into the 30s, I don't think it's as smooth anymore. Well, it's definitely not as smooth anymore. But I don't think I would enjoy the experience like this. It's a bit too choppy for me, and chances are, if you have a card like this, you are used to playing games at least 60 FPS and 1080p, you know. Not the latest ones, but older titles will run absolutely fine. So going down to 30, it's probably not something that you would want or like. It still works, it's still playable. If you're coming from console, for example, like a PS4 Pro, this will be a better experience as well. First of all, the input lag is much better when you're on PC. And second, I think it looks better than the PS4 Pro version. I haven't really checked what kind of settings that utilizes, but I'm fairly sure. I mean, this is a better card than what's inside of a PS4 Pro, so it must look better. And it's 1440p resolution, which looks really, really good as well. Let's enable FSR next, which should give us a ton more FPS, and indeed that's the case. We're up into the 50s at times. Awesome stuff, guys. Really awesome, actually. You know what? This is still a compelling option. Again, if you're not one of those people who care a lot about 60 FPS and only plays games at 60 FPS, this is good. It's 40s. 40s is alright. Actually, back when I started PC gaming, I'm not sure if I already told some of you about this in the previous video, but I used to play Battlefield Bad Company 2 a lot, and that was on my GTX 30M laptop at the time. It was a lower-end laptop, not really capable of achieving good FPS in games, and in Bad Company 2 I was playing at like 900p medium, I think, and without knowing much about FPS, I knew about it, but without counting them or seeing them even, I was thinking, at medium settings this feels really good. Let's turn this off now and maybe go to high settings. It's probably not a good idea. It's gonna drop from 30 FPS, I think. Come on, apply. Still applying, I hope. I doubt it's getting actual 7 frames. Or 11. What the hell? It's actually getting 11? No, it's just applied now. Okay, there we go. That's more like it. Right, 20s, mid to high 20s, what you get at 1440p high. So at this point, I would use it for screenshots, basically. Thing is, with quality FSR, it should save the day once again, since we were already so close to 30 at times, and indeed it does. It's back to the 40s. Back to the 40s. At 1440p high with a quality FSR, that's great. I thought it was gonna be low 30s or mid 30s at least on average, and we're getting 10 more FPS than that. All right, so let's try Ultra as well. Why not, right? Turn this off. Here we go. This is gonna be crappy, obviously. I forgot to disable motion blur, but we're not gonna spend a lot of time here, so don't really care about that. 18, 17 frames. Gets really intensive, as you can see. Let's enable FSR 2.1. I'm gonna keep motion blur on high to see that ghosting effect. It will disappear somewhat. As you can see, if you enable motion blur, I can't really see any ghosting right now. And it is in the lower 30s, so that means that in other areas in the map it could dip into the 20s, and I don't really recommend this. But if you overclock the card a little bit, or if you have a factory OC'd version like an zWORMz Strix, for example, it would probably stay above 30 FPS the entire time, because this is probably the weakest 1660 Super, the HP OEM version. And if you really, really want to make sure that you are 100% above 30 FPS, there I am with the 60, balanced FSR is also your friend. At this resolution, there we go, we're back into the high 30s, low 40s, mid 30s maybe at times. So I'm confident enough that it won't drop from 30 FPS at these settings. So you could lock it to 30, play on Ultra, balanced FSR still looks reasonable at 1440p, at 1080p, no. Let's go back to low settings. And at 4K resolution, I am gonna use the lowest settings possible. Actually, first, I'm gonna use the low preset to see how it runs. Okay? Damn, it's so much sharper. Wow. Alright, so it gets 22 frames per second now that everything applies. I thought it was gonna be a little bit worse, maybe. This is still cinematic, you know? These are cinematic FPS, close to 24. Let's stop right here now and take a look at the frames. 24 cinematic FPS once again. And let's go ahead and play at the actual lowest settings in the game. Because at 4K you do need that, obviously. Apply that, this is it. Gameplay tab, medium crowd density. This is more of a CPU bound setting, but I'm gonna set it to low anyways. And we gained about 5 frames per second, or 6. That's not bad, right? It looks way worse though, so I'm glad they tweaked the low settings to look a little bit better, the preset. But yeah, no, I don't like this, honestly. Let's go with the low settings preset now. Quality, FSR, disable, motion blur is already disabled, which is nice. Looks way better with that little bit of added shadow and ambient occlusion, you know. Yeah, I like that. And now we're up into the 30s, guys. 30s at 4K, not real 4K because of FSR, but it just looks the same, honestly, at this resolution if you use quality FSR. Same goes for XeSS or DLSS. It looks the same. Like, the PPI is so high on 4K monitors. Not so much in mine because it's 42 inches, but if you're using 32 inches or 27 inches, 28 inches, PPI is so high that it just doesn't really matter if you use FSR or not on quality in this particular title. It's playable now, and it still looks decent. Again, the low settings in this game, preset, they look decent. It's getting 32... What? I thought of ignoring 4K resolution for this card completely before I started recording this video. But I'm glad I didn't, because this is still providing a playable experience with FSR. Without it, it's completely unplayable, as we saw. But with it, it's actually alright. I'm gonna say this is an alright experience. If you have a huge monitor at 4K and for some reason you're stuck with a 1660 Super, or maybe you are building your setup, you buy a 4K monitor, you buy a good desk and chair and so on, and now you cannot spend a lot on the graphics card, but you will upgrade it later. Well, 1660 Super for 80 bucks, which is what I paid for it, again, it works. And with that, my friends, I'll leave it right here. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I love you all. Bye-bye and goodbye, Bob.